Yes.
Careful this behind you.
Please, let's get it done.
I agree.
Plugging one
Nothing
in.
more than that, I thought that'd be.
I think everybody's done
Charge
this
host.
one.
iPhone. Nah.
I'm good, how are you?
Carson Wentz just proposed to his girlfriend.
I don't know who that is that a football
Oh,
player?
oh. You're,
Is that a football
you're not
something?
living Philadelphia. This is Carson
Oh.
Wentz of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, okay.
Nice. My 23-year-old daughter lives and dies with Eagles football.
Oh, okay.
That was an exciting game.
Super Bowl, how's the win?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yeah?
No, no.
He did. I was on vacation with him, and he gets a call from a friend. I chartered a plane. You wanna go to the Super Bowl? I have a ticket for you. He ditched me.
Okay.
He left me in Miami.
I know, gaat ze zo.
And he went.
Wat
That's
is
funny.
is,
You guys good?
dubbel sheetrock, dubbel zagen,
Tuesday, February 6th, plan review meeting for the planning board. We're gonna start with application SD 20.
Before we start with any applications, I want to say something. And John, I assume you're probably going to want to add in, or do you want to start? We're going to be announcing a change to the format
I think
of
Mr. Schmackler should come in.
the technical
Yeah,
review.
one second.
meetings.
I think Mr.
Yeah,
Schmackler should hear it.
He wanted to hear, where is he?
He's in a meeting with the.
Yes, because they want me to hear the changes on the.
Quorum?
They want me to hear the changes.
All right, take two. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start today's meeting shortly. This is going to be the last tech meeting for the planning board under this format. As directed by the administration, directed by several members of the planning board, we have been requested to change the format of the technical review meeting and the process by which applications are going to go in front of the planning board. There have been concerns expressed by both the administration and several board members that the board is not receiving clear applications of sufficient detail, and they do not have the information in front of them for purposes of hearing the application and considering the relief that is being requested on each application. As I've indicated a couple times, including one or both of the January public meetings, one of the things that the board is going to be requesting, we are going to be requesting, is whenever we identify areas in our review where we're asking for clarification or we're asking for the applicants to give testimony at the public hearing about specific facets of the project, we will require written responses to all of those items in your revised submission, which will be incorporated in our second review, which will ultimately go in front of the board when deemed acceptable. We have also been given direction that from the board, from the administration, as well as several board members, that the planning board is going to be much more judicious in what design waivers for public improvements are going to be granted and which are not. Any request for improvement waivers along frontages in public areas are going to have to be justified in writing for consideration by the board, and if they are not satisfied with that justification, the odds are considerable that they are not going to be granted. Finally, we were requested by the administration and by several planning board members to change the format of this tech meeting. As we will do today, and as we've done with meetings going to the beginning of last year, we've reviewed these applications and we've indicated whether they are technically complete, and we've given what we wanted to have revised for purpose of the public hearing. The format is going to change such that we are going to give you these reviews today, and it's gonna be on you to give us the information we are asking for. We are not going to commit to when these applications are being scheduled today. You're not gonna get a commitment that says this is gonna be scheduled for the meeting of March 20th or whatever the March meeting is. We are not gonna schedule an application for a hearing until we receive the information that is being requested, until we review it, and until we meet with the applicants on each application individually, and we go through the revised submission, and we make a determination as to whether or not it's ready to go to the planning board. If it is deemed to be responsive, we will pass it on. If it is deemed not to be responsive, we will give direction as to what's gotta be changed to get to a board hearing, and you're going to either come back again for a second meeting, or we will receive the information and then schedule based upon the information. This tech meeting process is common in a number of other municipalities that both I represent and John represents, and that is the direction that we have received going forward in terms of future tech meetings. Would you
Yeah,
like
just
to add?
to follow up on that, I mean, don't be alarmed by this process. The purpose behind it is to provide a more streamlined application at the planning board. I know many of the people in this room have had experiences where you get there, you sat there all night, you've waited your time in line, and then you find out that somebody's dissatisfied with things that are on the plans that probably should have been caught early in the process, like curbs and sidewalks, how the trash is going to be picked up and moved around, whether Public Works approves of it, whether a traffic study is required, the proofs that are necessary to show the properties next door, et cetera. So the idea of this is, as it goes through this process, it will become a more finished product and make it so that the board can be more focused and efficient when the board gets the application. So the board is asking us to try to get the applicants to, and for us, to step it up a little bit and have a more finished product on a more consistent basis when we get to the hearing. I mean, certainly many applications come in and they're in good shape, and they're the ones that go through with no headaches. So what we're trying to do is either screen out and or encourage the applications that might be a little lacking to tighten it up a little, so the board has a cleaner product. And we think in the long run that this is going to hopefully eliminate some of the frustrations that people have, where you sit there till 9 o'clock at night and then you have to come back. Frustration of the board saying, why are we taking this case when it's not really ready, et cetera. This is a process that many other towns employ. I know when I'm an applicant's attorney, I look forward to technical review meetings because it gives you an opportunity to roll up your sleeves, get the plans out, get very frank feedback and things that the applicant maybe didn't see that can help refine the product and make it better when it gets in front of the board. So that's what we're doing, as opposed to having this cattle call type of arrangement where everyone has to sit and listen to everybody else. The meetings are going to be privately scheduled. So, if Mr. McFarland knows that he has a meeting at 2 o'clock, that's going to be his hour or the time allotted depending on, the specifics of that application. And I'm sure many of the engineers here are used to this process in a lot of other towns. So, I'm very optimistic that you're going to think it's an improvement over our existing system, make it more efficient, more productive, and to ultimately get a better product. And then also so that when, to try to give the public a little more confidence that things are being, very carefully scrutinized and only go before the board when it's a pretty clean product. And I know Mr. Herzl's here basically as a guest. He's just kind of observing to so he can be confident that we're going to do the plan reviews in the way that the chairman and the board itself envisions. All right, so with that said, if we could just go, anything you want to add, Ally, or?
No, actually, I have a question though. Given the format we've been following, which is receive the submission, Terry prepares a review letter, then we come to a plan review meeting. Are we still following that, or are you gonna prepare a review letter, say, make comments, and then come to the plan, make revisions per the comments, and then come to the plan review meeting?
We should issue.
Right?
That's my question.
That would make much more.
We should issue the review the way it's done in other towns that I represent.
just pretty uniform.
The review is done first.
Right,
Based upon the review being issued, the applicant can be scheduled for a tech meeting. Now, one of the things that is going to come out of this process, you're not going to have just one tech meeting a month. You're going to have multiple tech meetings. In Woodbridge, which I represent both boards, they meet almost every week. And they'll schedule anywhere from 2 to 4 applications, depending upon the size of the application. Most applications, a major site plan, unless there's major issues, you can typically cover within a half-hour appointment.
I just feel that this tech meeting, where we're bringing the letter and the plans that they have, we sit here for a few minutes just to go over the letter.
Right.
Couldn't we give them the letter, say,
Oh, yeah,
Josh,
they'll get it.
here's the comments, make your changes per this letter, address this letter. When you resubmit, then we'll schedule you for that tech meeting to determine if you're
Well,
acceptable
that's
for
something
public
a lot
hearing.
of, a lot of the engineers and design firms will do that. As soon as they get the letter, they'll make revisions based on it. And then when they come, it might be the next generation.
Right,
And we can deal with that at the tech meeting. So nothing's stopping
well,
anyone from
that's
being
what I'm asking,
proactive.
but
We
Terry's
certainly give the
indicating a
applicants,
different plan.
in my experience, and this is mine only, they do a tech review based on the first letter. And sometimes, particularly if it's a minor request, the TRC committee, which includes not just us, but it includes township people as well in the case of Woodbridge, the TRC committee may say, okay, the application is not perfect, which the applications typically are not, but there's sufficient information that the board members are going to understand the concept of the application, and we have no major objections. And they'll let the person go on to public hearing. You may have applications where we do an initial review, and there's a lot that has to be done. I wouldn't have a problem personally if people want to wait and get the review, and then make the submissions, and then schedule a tech meeting. I have no objection to that.
Especially if it's a larger project that needs
Correct.
lots of revisions,
Correct.
rather than a minor sub.
That
that's
may
one or
be
two.
something that the applicants,
Okay,
you have that prerogative.
okay,
If you turn in a large application and we give you comments and you say, no, prior to us even meeting to go in front of the board, if you want to try to make the changes first, that's great.
okay.
Okay, so we'll learn. I mean, they'll be scheduled, and I think it'll be pretty self-evident. And it shouldn't be a novel process to, any of the design professionals who regularly appear before this board. Not many
It's
people.
going to be different because it hasn't been done here before, and because of the volume of the applications, things have moved at a much faster pace than in most places. Once everyone gets the general hang of the way this works and the way it flows, I think it will serve you in the long term by the time you get to the public hearing. The public hearing will be much more straightforward. You'll have much fewer unanswered questions, and hopefully good applications will be able to go forward in a more expeditious manner.
I have one question. Some towns, if it's a minor conforming application for a minor sub, we'll just submit it, and instead of going to that technical review meeting, we'll just get a phone call from the planning board secretary saying, you're ready to be scheduled. Based on that first
That's a
review.
possibility. The very straightforward, simple applications that
That are
they
not
may-
asking for waivers on curb or
Yeah,
sidewalk.
Which happens, whatever there is, there's a number of them
You know,
nowadays.
there's a possibility that could be screened in the discretion of the engineer and myself.
And the
now.
planning board,
Yeah.
the planning board would have to give you, allow you to do that. And
Well,
no
we'll
sense in
know if
Costing
they-
them money and coming to more meetings just to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's a big difference between a 100-unit townhome or condominium or multifamily
Absolutely.
versus
I would
a
think-
shul on an existing
I would
lot.
think that first review letter from Terry would say, this is fully conforming, does not need any design waivers, it's a
Correct.
minor
Right.
subdivision.
Yeah.
I don't see need for a tech meeting, and it could go to public hearing.
Even simple additions onto commercial building, they'll be dealt with on a case-by-case
Right.
basis.
Or
and they'll be
the
responsible.
site plan, the change of use site plan exemptions, if there are no variances and everything is.
The idea isn't to make things more complicated, it's to separate the wheat from the chaff.
But just, Terry, one more clarification. Initially, you said that you're gonna give the review letter at the tech meeting. Now you're clarifying you're gonna give the review letter earlier than that.
No, we're going to continue to issue the reviews when the reviews are complete. And they would be prior to a tech meeting. Yeah, we wouldn't have you come in and blindside you.
Right, that's what I thought you said when you made the first presentation.
I'm not
And
that
I
mean,
was
come on.
wondering.
So it sounds like the tech review would be scheduled once we have a review letter.
Exactly.
I think, yeah, what we'll do is I'll
That's
wait.
what I meant to say, if
It
I
may
did.
be more on, maybe on the engineers to help me establish a timeline for the tech meeting. Once we get Terry's review, you reach out to me and
Yeah.
say, I'll have plans for you on this date, can we get a tech meeting on February 15th or somewhere close to there, and then I can schedule from there.
Yeah, and that can be your discretion. Either you want to meet on the first letter, or you say, you know what, we have a letter, we'd like to take the opportunity and clean the plans up, and then perhaps we have the tech meeting on the second letter. And if it's clean, then you'll be ready to go to the meeting.
John, I'll need to talk to you about my deadlines for making sure things come to a meeting.
You know, the way it'll work is, you know, once Terry thinks things are ready, we'll contact you and a meeting will be scheduled, we'll come here. And, you know, we'll tell the applicants when the meeting date will be.
Right, I'm just saying, if the applicants don't reach out to me, I have to track the ones and reach out to them and say, hey, you never reached out. We're gonna hit that deadline for me to do something for you, I'm gonna issue a letter that says you're still not complete, or whatever.
Okay, or we could talk about that.
Okay.
All right, we ready to get going?
Yes, Malice Satora, it's a minor subdivision on Salem and Gates. I do know right off the bat, an improvement plan wasn't submitted, so the board engineer is making some assumptions about requesting waivers for curb and sidewalk and road improvements in the rear.
Right, I only have one question.
Okay?
When's the public hearing?
Optimist.
This is still following the old format.
Ally, do you have an extra copy of the agenda?
And I'll wait.
Right, Terry, you said that?
Would you like the current recent
I have it on
result?
here.
No, not really.
No,
Be
we
careful
are,
what you ask for.
we're gonna
I learned
prepare
on the
an
daycare
improvement plan
center.
Okay.
and show curb sign.
Okay, assuming that you're still gonna be asking for waivers back there though.
Yes,
Okay.
because I mean, Terry, I think
Right.
is aware, you probably are not, but that's a subject of a separate application.
Right, that'll come to the zoning board, I
That's before the
assume.
zoning board, right, so we're gonna prepare, plans for curb and sidewalk along Salem,
Okay,
along the property front.
okay.
Pedestrian, handicap pedestrian that comes from the street.
And then I think the rest of the application was pretty straightforward, obviously, we're just asking for the lot width, variance down to 75. Lot sizes are conforming. Just asking for the lot-
Exactly.
asking for the lot width variance.
All right, so you're going to give us a revised submission, which includes the answers
An
to the
improvement plan.
testimony.
Yes.
An improvement plan.
Right.
And then hopefully, if things are in good shape technically, we'll
Right.
be able to schedule.
And just so you understand, I'm not going to show the houses or the lot grading. I just want to submit improvement plans for the
Yeah, that's fine.
curb and sidewalk along the
Put
front
that
of the
in
property.
writing as to
Yeah.
what you're submitting and
Obviously,
what
that-
you're not submitting.
Individual lots
That
of
will be
plots.
sorted out when plot plans are done for the
And,
individual
and,
lots.
and indicate that the applicant understands that the plot plans are gonna have to conform with the plot plan and zoning requirements, or you would need to have more relief at that
Right.
time.
Right. Our intent is that they would satisfy with the setback requirements. And no other variances would be necessary, and so would be appropriate to ask for them now. Yeah, wetlands, that's already.
Just wanted to
Yeah, I
verify.
think you just asked for a copy of the LOI.
Yeah, just copies.
I just asked if the LOIs were submitted, just to make sure they've got
Yeah,
those.
and also, you're gonna give testimony that,
I'm
the
sorry.
properties are not impacted by any category one buffers.
Correct, and they're not. Because it's 50-foot buffer here, which falls between.
Well, that's the
It falls
wetland
between a
buffer.
no, 50-foot right now. That falls between the wetlands line and the wetland.
Did the state tell you it's 50 foot?
It's 50 foot, it's not shown on the C1 map. It's not shown on the,
All right.
on
Okay.
the state maps for C1.
Yeah, the 50 foot is typically the intermediary associated with the wetlands,
No,
which is
50 foot
different than the
riparian.
Cat 1.
50-foot riparian.
Okay.
Not a 300-foot riparian.
Okay, all right.
These,
If you can justify your,
These are the four lots, what are you gonna do with this?
Well, this remainder is part of an application which is actually pending before the zoning board. An application to extend this road and bring townhouses, duplexes.
It's duplexes, right?
That's pending?
Yes.
Yes.
You
And,
submitted it.
and these are all one lot now, both? This is
No,
all
it's
one lot?
it's
Now,
several
this
lots.
is 3 individual
5
lots, 3 individual lots.
Okay.
Here that have frontage on Salem, 2 lots here that have frontage on this unimproved gates. The application before the zoning board is to extend this portion of gates.
Right.
Clearly in here and duplexes in here and in here.
Okay, but this is all one lot now, no?
No.
It's 3 several long lots,
Yeah.
3 long
Right,
lots,
it's
yes.
3 long lots, 1, 2, 3 that go back to
I'm
here
just
right now.
confused, why isn't this subdivision part of that application for the, zoning board? That's what I don't get.
Because we'd like to get the minor subdivision done first, and then we could sell off these 4 lots for people to build.
I'm
single-family
sorry if I'm
houses.
grabbing you, I just need.
That's okay, no.
Okay, so we're doing.
Because this application has other permit requirements, this has water extension, sewer extension.
But it's pending now?
This application has
It's pending.
wetlands.
Like you submitted an application to the Board of
We
Adjustment?
submitted an application to the Board of Adjustment, it got heard at a technical hearing. Honestly, this is an area that was slated to be rezoned under the master plan, which is the reason that it's on hold.
Certain road improvements are made that.
Correct, and this is going to be conforming.
Would be
The application that we
Right, but
currently
that
have
would
in
be 10
front of
years
you.
from now.
So that's why it's still in front of the zoning board. Well, that's why I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
It was definitely submitted to the zoning board. We've pulled it back and kept it on hold to see where the master plan goes. And then, in the meanwhile, the applicant wants to be able to deal with those 4 lots while he waits to see how this is gonna be affected by the master plan and the roads and the
I mean,
infrastructure.
ultimately, even if that application doesn't go through, whoever ends up with this parcel is still gonna need an approval of some sort to use it, whether it's subdivision or site plan.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I would see support for the, the road improvement waivers, obviously.
Well, no, I'm just, existing stream, what's that?
What is that? It's an existing water course that runs through part of the property.
Right, so, okay, now I'm picking up that. So do you have a, like a building envelope that's outside of all the buffers and everything?
Yes.
This is the plan, this is
Yeah, I
where
get
they're
that.
showing the units.
Is that far enough away from that stream? Didn't we have a recent amendment with like the,
I remember a recent master plan amendment when we talked about, can you talk about category 1 buffers? That's what we were discussing a few minutes ago.
Right, this is not category 1, this waterway.
so,
There's a 50-foot riparian buffer, which is measured from the top of the bank.
and you're outside of that?
Yes.
Just don't know how to, the fact that there's a Board of Adjustment application. Now, does your Board of Adjustment application show not include these lots, these?
The Board of Adjustment application is on hold indefinitely. So I would imagine that when they go forward with that one, they will have to update it to reflect the new lot numbers.
Correct, Ally's correct on that.
Okay, so
It's
that's
not
kinda
going
like
anywhere
suspended.
fast.
But the question is, the plans that were on file with that, do they show these 5 lots being, or 4 lots being taken off?
They show these 4 lots being taken off.
In other words, your application with
No,
the
they
Board of
probably
Adjustment.
just show no disturbance, no use of that portion of the property.
Well, so your application would have the lot area for the whole tract. I mean, this will have a pretty material change to your pending application with the Board of
If
Adjustment.
this were to be acted upon, you would have to amend the
Yeah, I
application.
just think it's the zoning board's concern and not ours.
They haven't received their approval. If and when this gets approved and they decide to go to the board and finish, they're gonna have to amend the
Yeah, it's just a
application.
little, and then we have to make sure there's a mechanism where the Board of Adjustment knows that we did this, which I think you tell them, but I think we're.
Terry
I mean, it's gotta be a
wears
mechanism.
both hats.
I feel like a mechanism.
And Terry, I'll refresh your memory. This was the application. We came to tech meeting, I believe it was last February. And then at that point, the the applicant elected not to schedule it because this area was up for discussion.
Right,
This
the
is an
master plan
R20 zone that the
discussion.
master plan rezones to R10A, which permits duplexes.
In which case you wouldn't even need to.
And the
zone.
possibility
That
of
is
to the planning
correct.
board.
That's the reason that it's on hold, but what the applicant wants to do is these 4 lots were never really affecting the zoning board application. So the applicant is elected to come to the planning board, let's finish this subdivision, then we'll come back and deal with the zoning board.
You haven't acted, the zoning board hasn't acted on this, so
No.
there's no approval that has to be vacated.
What about, just remind me, is Gates Avenue improved now?
No.
They're
No.
requesting waivers from improving those
Right.
with the intent that
Right, so
the
Clinton
remainder parcels
Avenue's
would do that.
improved.
No,
No,
Clinton and
Clinton
Gates are
Avenue's
not.
unapproved, Clinton and Gates are both unapproved.
So if we give this subdivision, we're creating a landlocked lot then?
No, it has frontage on Gates Avenue.
We're not improving it,
We're
but it
granting-
has frontage on Gates.
The board
That's
would be
frontage on
granting
Gates.
design waivers for improving the
okay.
roads.
That's frontage on Gates.
And we can't build on it unless we improve the road.
Right.
Well,
Right.
it's just that, you know, the message that I've been getting though is they want us to try to encourage people to improve the roads so that we have a full network of roads and sidewalks and
Just
everything
had a
else.
whole discussion about that.
I know.
And just so you
We just had
understand.
one very
No,
similar
I
to this in
mean,
January.
we just discussed.
I know.
We
And
had one
I
very
just don't know how
similar
the
to
board's
this.
gonna react to that, you know, they
Well, we
might.
had one last month, very similar. Do you remember the one where there was, the road had wetlands going through it? And so the lot wouldn't be able to be, we came to the
Yes.
board and said, we can't build
That
on
one
it.
was messy though, because that was
And
a
the board
single
agreed with
family
it.
lot. This, I think, is much clearer because you're clearly not gonna put one house there. No matter what, you're gonna have to come back to the board, whether it's a subdivision or site plan. Whatever you put there, you're gonna have to come to the board.
Right.
And at that time, the board can just simply not decide to grant the waivers, obviously, because you're gonna need access somewhere.
Correct, but even, just to remind you, even on that other one, the board did in the end grant it, saying,
Right.
we understand, you can't build on it unless you have a road.
Well, this is what my point is, I mean, seems to me like the type of thing they wanna say, I don't want you to go to the board, and then the board say, you know, why did this get advanced? Because there's no curbs and sidewalks or improvements on these roads in the back, because the Board of Adjustment may or may not ever approve that, and they may or might not ever prosecute that, I mean, it could just sit like that, and that might be fine with the board to just leave it vacant and wouldn't not approved, I don't know, so you're gonna have to present that to the board, but be prepared to address that, that's going to be the board's call. And I would recommend that you get like an aerial photograph on this as part of your proofs with an overlay of it, so they can see where the woods are and the
And so
surrounding
you
area.
understand, John, some of the gory details, which of course, you know, Terry is aware of. This Golders Green Road, when this development was built,
Right,
okay, so this little, I'm gonna call this little cul-de-sac, this little parking lot turn there at the end of Golders Green Road, that was filled about 5 or 6 feet. Okay, above existing grade, there is a retaining wall, you can see it on the plan here, there's a retaining wall.
where is that?
At Golders Green Road here, this turnaround area, at the end of this project, this is filled about 5 or 6 feet above the existing grade of Gates Avenue. This was filled, you know, to fill this development.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was trying to.
That's an existing- and
So
that's an
this,
existing
so this right now is 6 feet higher than this right here. So our plans that we presented to the zoning board for the duplex, you know, show filling this site and get these road grades to match, bring, you know, road in and bring the duplexes in. So it's kind of, it's not just, you know, pushing a road through and putting it in grade, just so you understand it's a little more complicated.
Have you had any discussions with anyone on the governing body about what their thoughts are about putting a road there or not putting a road there, or?
Not with the governing body specifically, but we had gone to the zoning board for our use variance application, at which that detail was discussed, and I, you know, believe the zoning board was in favor of that,
I just
of that procedure.
have to know, okay.
But it has not gone any further than that at this point yet.
Okay. All right, it's just, you know, I don't, what's your sense on this? Doesn't it sound a lot like the issue with the, you know, where?
If this were in the vicinity where they're proposing to develop this minor subdivision, I would say yes. This is on the other side of a large property that's under review of the zoning board. So they certainly are going to have to make their case to the planning board, and the planning board may feel differently,
Okay.
but that's going to be their case to make. I think the case is, on this part of this property, there is an application from the zoning board that will be acted on at some time in the future, unless the zoning changes, and comes back to planning
Maybe
board.
they came back to planning.
But one of the boards is going to formally consider the improvements of those roads at that time, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Just looking at the review letter. Did the review letter talk about the pending
We
zoning
does not
application?
talk about
No.
Yeah, that's gotta be highlighted. You know, that's something we have to,
Well, it's on hold for now.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've asked for in the letter, the applicant must provide written justification for said waivers to the board's satisfaction. So they're gonna respond.
Okay.
And they're gonna put in writing what we've talked about today, and the board is going to say yes or no.
All right, and, everything else the board wants?
I didn't see any other red flags in Terry's review.
So I get them back to you as fast as I can, and then we decide where we're going.
No, it's a
Fa-
race.
That's what we learned today.
Yeah.
Right,
Fast
you'll
is
review
not
it.
necessarily your friend.
But you'll review it, and then you'll let me know whether we have to come back and sit down with you again,
Or whether they're
or
gonna
whether we
not.
can best go.
With a
Yeah,
written,
that
Right.
sounds
with
good to
Graham,
me.
you'll put in a written justification explaining that there's a pending zoning board application that's on hold.
Yeah, and
Due to the
that's,
zone
and that's
change.
gonna be standard for anything where we're looking for testimonies to be provided on this item. Terry's letters and my plan review notes will now say, written, a narrative must be provided addressing those items in writing for the board, otherwise you're going forward at risk.
Are you asking
We-
for a narrative on the variance testimony?
We're asking you to put in writing anywhere where we are asking for
Or just
to
technical
give
items?
relief.
Right.
You're going to provide written justification as to why you're requesting the relief and why you feel it's justified.
So it will
Where
be,
we've asked in
The
applications,
lawyers have to review it as
not
well.
necessarily in this application, but if it's a school application, and we have standard questions that go in every review. Tell us what kind of school, do they have buses, do students drive, how many parents?
Right.
The board doesn't wanna wait until to hear the answer at the public hearing. They wanna see it in writing in our final pre-hearing review, which means you have to give it to us.
Which
As an
means,
aside, as an aside to that, some of the towns, specifically Jackson Township, they require a statement of operations with an application.
That's
Which
what
you
I
can sort of talk-
I
you
referred
sort of talked
to
already
a
about.
number of times as an application
When
writer.
we did a shul in Jackson last night, and we had to submit a statement of operation.
Yeah.
And have to say, this many people.
The board
this many,
members
blah,
have
blah,
the
blah, blah,
information,
blah, blah, blah.
exactly.
They have it, they look at it, they ask questions, oh, well, we wanna make sure that this doesn't have, let's add that,
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of just a plan, they also have that written document.
And the board members have that written document, and they have time prior to the
To
meeting
process it before
to
the meeting.
review,
Right.
as opposed to.
And it's just trying to get everybody on the same,
7:30
it's trying to get
start
everybody on the same page.
which also means, Graham, we have to interface with each other.
Yeah.
We both have
Yes.
to, we both have to see that.
We think in the
before it
long
goes
term,
on.
as you found out last night, in the long term, after everyone gets used to doing this in Lakewood, it's going to make the public hearing process a lot easier, because everyone is gonna be prepared for what you're asking for and whether they're comfortable or not.
Right. Going back to this application with that stream, that's a little exotic, that a stream runs through the middle of your property. Make sure you get as much information about that as you can.
Okay.
So, 'cause,
It was an interesting term, John.
well, I mean, we
You
don't.
better hope it's not exotic.
We don't
I
get
don't
that
think
many.
it's-
Typically doesn't bode well at the
This-
state.
we- You haven't
don't-
seen that
We don't
many.
see too many subdivisions where there's a stream running through the middle of the lot.
All of Chestnut, everything that goes down that
And
stretch.
I know that a
over
lot
there
of
is got
times
it.
stream cases get opposition from people, right, environmental concerns. So my point is just be prepared to,
Let's hope exotic doesn't include.
maybe exotic's the wrong word.
Okay, so we'll address these and,
great,
see where we go.
see where you stand, thank
All right,
you.
thanks.
Just send me-
Thank you.
This was
Well, we'll talk.
Well,
Is something else?
I just,
How many more?
Thank you.
One or two, or?
three,
Wait,
but
okay,
there's
then
this
we'll
one,
talk-
this one, and this
Then
one.
we'll talk later or tomorrow.
Yeah.
The next one is Congregation by Shop C, by Sherman's office. Are you on this?